Okay, we should get started. Debbie, would you do the opening prayers, please?
I would be happy to, if everyone could mute. And let's begin by establishing a nice environment for our practice tonight by bringing back the scattered pieces of our body, speech, and mind and harmonizing them together before we begin. So begin by assuming your meditation posture and relaxing, letting your breath settle into its natural rhythm. Noticing any places where you're holding stress, tension. Notice and relax. And notice any thoughts and emotions that you bring with you from the day that might be distractions. And release those. Set them aside for a little while. Release any speed and aggression. And bring your mind home to the here and the now, to this place of practice together. And just be spacious. And now let's go a little deeper and reverse the sequence. Bring your mind home by turning it within. Resting in the nature of your mind without manipulation. In the state of non-meditation. Release your mind from its prison of grasping. And this happens naturally as glimpse after glimpse of your mind, your trust and confidence in its true nature grows. And the natural ease and generosity arises. And you melt away into the inspiration of meditation. And relax into the state of Rigpa, where your thoughts and emotions come and go, quite naturally without any interference and manipulation. They're the natural movement of your mind, dissolving into the nature of your mind. All mother sentient beings especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming, joining us tonight. Before we get started on our regular discussion, I just want to draw your attention to the email that I sent everybody regarding the this Wrathful Mandala, the Wrathful Deity Mandala. So if you all printed this and the other page that came along with this, and I just want to briefly explain these to you. If anybody has any questions, we can talk about it. but this is the Wrathful Deity Mandala, and you can see the different deities. So in the center are the Harukas, and you can see them in the Vajra Haruka. You can see them in the different color areas and so on, and some on what they represent, such as I'm looking at the Vajra Haruka, which is in the white segment, and it says the natural transformation of aversion into mirror-like pristine cognition. So these are helpful things to be able to guide you in your study of trying to understand the wrathful deities. So in each one of the other segments, you see the step or the level of the Matara Yogini, then the Pisachi Yogini, and then is the inner gatekeeper, and then the different Ishvari, and then the outer gatekeeper. So all this is identified in here, and to help you to remember, sort out, be able to visualize what this mandala is like. On this one paper are all the references I think you need to be able to guide you in this. So if you take your time and you study this, you contemplate this for a while, it'll begin to sink in. If you prefer, or in addition to, if you have this book, if you have the Dorje Gourmet translation book, and you can go to the appendix, and I think it's the second part of the appendix here that begins on page if we go to page 395 in the index, is a spreadsheet that continues on for several pages that is the source material for this mandala. So if you prefer the spreadsheet, or in addition to the mandala, you might want to study that and compare those. Be very, very useful.
What page was that in the Tibetan Book of the Dead?
395, I think I said. I just closed the book.
Okay.
Then the second sheet that was in the attachment that I sent, it has a redundancy of the meaning of the different gatekeepers in each of the four quadrants, so that you have another way to be able to, access this material and so on, to make it useful. But in the center here are the dissonant mental states and the 20 subsidiary mental states. So this is literally what the wrathful deities are working on. So the dissonant mental states are what the Haruka class are working on, while the 20 subsidiary states, the mental states, is what all the other deities, all the other wrathful deities are working on. And we can see that there are these subtleties to these names here. So like anger, malice, dissimulation, fury, envy, miserliness, dishonesty, and so on like that. So it should give us cause to contemplate those different emotions that we have within ourselves that are all like subsets of the main emotions of ignorance and hatred and jealousy and desire and doubt, pride, and so on like that. So, and there's probably more that you could add to that list, but these are the ones that are listed in the book. So I think that this would be very helpful to be able to guide you in your contemplation of how all is fitting together and so on. So if we're feeling these emotions, that these different deities can help us, if we can visualize these deities and how they work, what they are teaching us about the four forms of birth and the 4 enlightened activities and so on like that, we can begin to piece together a strategy to be able to overcome what might be our mental blockages, our obscurations, our difficulties, our confusions, and so on. So without going into a whole lot of detail, this is just kind of an outline to kind of give you confidence to use these tools. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Lance, right under the 20 subsidiary states, you have dissonance, dissimulation, indecorum, and obfuscation.
Yes.
What are those referring to?
Well, those terms are listed in the 20 subsidiary mental states, but for myself, I cannot remember what they mean. So
I see.
those are the
Okay.
definitions for those. Sometimes those 25-cent words confuse me a little bit. So I have to give myself constant reminders
Well,
as
they
to
help me too.
what they mean.
Thank you. They help.
Okay. So my practice is a very practical practice, and I try and define things very clearly for myself, or give myself aids to be able to do that.
Where's that, Debbie?
In the blue text in the center.
Are you
of
looking
the-
at this page, Adrian?
I am.
Well, look at
It's
the center bottom where it says
Oh, I see.
dissonant discord. You see
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Those are the definitions of those words that appear above.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Okay, so last week we completed part 2. Does anybody have any other questions or comments that you'd like to, discuss before we start the next part? Okay, fine. If anybody has anything that comes up, don't hesitate to jot it down, and you can bring it up in one of our sessions, or you can write me a message and we'll reply to you, or we'll include it in our meeting and talk about it so everybody can hear the question and the response and so on. So now we've come to part 3. So I'm on page 150 here. And if we're looking at our table of contents, we're in part 3. It says an elucidation of the intermediate state of rebirth. So now we're moving into the 6th Bardo. So you remember that there's 6 Bardos, and the Bardo of reality was the Bardo that we just left. So now we're entering the 6th Bardo, the Bardo of becoming or rebirth. So what this would mean is that we have not successfully been able to liberate in the Bardo of reality or during the Bardo of death. And now we're falling away, and we're falling now into to become reborn again. And so now it becomes a question of what are we going to be born as, and how does that work? How does that happen, and so on. So always remember that this is all symbolic. All these references in here are symbolic, and that the most important thing for us to use as a tool to be able to understand how this works is our own personal meditation. That everything that we're talking about here, everything that we've talked about so far, happens in our meditation, and this included. So when we go into a meditation, we are hoping to be reborn again as a more holy person, as a more sacred person, as a person who is closer to spirituality, to our true nature. So in that regard, however we enter that meditation, there is this, if you will, a death. because we're not going to be the same person that we were when we enter that. And then there's going to be a rebirth, a reemergence of ourselves after the meditation. And then, so then we become now a more purified person. We become closer to our goal and so on. So there's another simile to this, and that is when we start these 2-hour meetings that we have on Friday, and we start them, that by the time we finish them, we have learned some things. We have experienced some thoughts. We have had some emotions come up, and maybe some answers to those emotions. So in that way, we are different people than we were when we started. So we're constantly going through this birth, rebirth, change in our lives. It's part of the human condition. But now we are adding the spirituality to it. So the drama of going from an ordinary human being with an ordinary physical body and an ordinary brain, an ordinary mind, is now really accentuated by now refining that and being able to transcend that into the spiritual body. So we're awakening in the spiritual body. So again, my point here was to say that as we are entering into this bardo of rebirth, that we are visualizing this as our meditation practice, as well as what we are doing for the benefit of someone who has passed away. So they are similes to each other. They're metaphors for each other, if you will. Okay, anybody have any questions about any of that? That visualization, that understanding? Okay. So this next part is not as much visual aspect as it is processing meaning and relative understanding of what is going on in this bardo of becoming. So it takes a little bit of attention. It takes a little bit of rereading many times to be able to put it together, what this is referring to, what this is meaning. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be the reader here, and I'm going to give explanations as we go. This first section from page 150, excuse me, to 171, 21 pages, is chock full of stuff. So hopefully we can get through it tonight, but maybe not. And but we'll continue on as we've been doing, that we will not skip over anything, and we will go slowly enough that everybody can have a chance of understanding and ask questions and have a discussion. So don't hesitate to stop me if that comes up in your mind. So please, everybody have your book, turn to page 150 and follow my recitation. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Kunchok Bema Dorje, listen carefully and understand. Hell beings, gods, and those with the body of the intermediate state are born in a supernormal manner. Formerly, when the visions of the peaceful and wrathful deities arose before you, during the intermediate state of reality, you did not recognize them. Then, overwhelmed by terror, you will have fainted. 4.5 days later, upon awakening from this faint, your consciousness has again become clear, and a body resembling your former one has arisen. This body is described in the Tantras. Having the bodily form of one's past and emergent existences, complete with all the sense faculties and the power of unobstructed movement, endowed with miraculous abilities derived from past actions, visible to those similar in kind and through pure clairvoyance. So the next page is going to explain some more of that, but I just want to go back to here in this page and just mention a couple things. So here it says, hell beings, gods, and those with the body of intermediate state are born in a supernormal manner. So what this means is the intermediate state means the Bardo state. So we're in a Bardo state now. We're in the Bardo of living. And during this Bardo of living, we experience the Bardo of dreams when we go to sleep. And we experience the Bardo of meditation, concentration, when we do meditation. So that's within this Bardo of living. So we're Bardo beings already. Then when we pass, when we die, when our body stops working, we pass into the Bardo of death. And then from the Bardo of death, we go into the Bardo of reality. And the Bardo of reality here is mentioned as the intermediate state of reality. So I just want to point that out to you, that what's being said here, the intermediate state is the Bardo of reality. Intermediate is the literal meaning of Bardo. So this should be kind of fused in your awareness, in your mind. Okay. And during this time, it says here, you did not recognize any of these opportunities. You didn't recognize it during the time you were living. You didn't recognize it when you were dreaming. You didn't recognize it when you were meditating. You didn't recognize it when you were going through the Bardo of death. And you didn't recognize it during the time that you're in the Bardo of reality. But you had opportunity in every single one of those Bardos to recognize it. And hopefully, by doing this book, by studying this Bardo Thodol, that you will begin to recognize it in this Bardo. Enlightenment, liberation is possible in this lifetime. So in that vein, we will move forward. Says now, because you did not liberate, it says, overwhelmed by terror, you will have fainted 4.5 days later. Upon awakening from this faint, your consciousness has become clear, and a body resembling your former one now has arisen. So now this is kind of like another metaphor. And the days, we can't be strict about the number of days and so on. But there's this period where we may have lost our concentration, this period where we may have lost our recognition, our realization of what we're doing and so on. So this is what this is alluding to. So, and then it says, the body described in the Tantras. So the Tantras are the practices of the Dharma. The sutras are the teachings of the Dharma. The Buddha taught the sutras, but he also taught the Tantras. So the Tantras are much higher level, the high yoga Tantras, they call them. So these are the practices. So this is among them. The Bardo Thodol is among those highest yoga Tantras. So the Tantras, again, are the practices. Tantra literally means continuum. So by recognizing this continuum of practice, that we're always practicing, we're always in the midst of this, as long as we are alive, as long as we're living, as long as we're not Buddha, we are in the midst of this practice. So the bodhisattvas are in practice. The yogis are in practice. We're all in practice. When we reach the level of Buddha, then we will have become liberated from that. We will be that, whatever that is. We will be liberated. We will be the bodhicitta. Okay. So now going over this 4-line prayer again, it says, having the bodily form of one's past and emergent existences. So now we're in this netherland, if you will, this bardo of becoming. And now we're in this bodily form of one's past and emergent existences. So what this means, this is a karmic body, but it's not a body of flesh and blood, but it's a body that we can can recognize as being the result of all the things that have come before, that we have imprinted ourselves as being. And remember, we've been here many times. We've all died many times. We've all been born many times. So as we begin this process, we begin to have remembrances of what this is like. Not that we begin to remember, oh, this was me back in the womb, or this was me back in 1850 or something like that. It's not quite that literal. But we begin to recognize the dynamics of the way in which the spirituality is working with our karmic body. They call it here the mental body. Okay, so having the bodily form of one's past and emergent existences. So these emergent is the karma that's coming ripe now, that's coming up now. That's like the karmic winds that are kind of blowing us like a leaf in the wind, that's blowing us through this bardo of becoming, our karma, our past karma, because we are attached to this karma. We are still attached. We haven't liberated from it. We didn't liberate. If we would have liberated in the bardo of reality, we wouldn't have this problem. But because we didn't, now we have to suffer the consequences. So the next line says, complete with all sense faculties and the power of unobstructed movement, endowed with miraculous abilities derived from past actions, visible to those similar in kind and through pure clairvoyance. So now we're going to go through the next page, 151, and it's going to explain this a little bit better maybe than I can. So here it says, here, past and emergent means that your present body, which is a product of your past habitual tendencies, will resemble a body of flesh and blood, but like a body of the auspicious Eon, the Vajrakalpa, it will also be radiant and possess certain of the major and minor marks. So this is a bardo body. It's not a human, it's not a flesh and blood body, but it is a spiritual body that is in this bardo still. So it's making a point here of the auspicious Eon, the Vajrakalpa. So there are these periods of time, that the kalpa is a time. And so there's this auspicious time when you are becoming, you're in like this netherland, so to speak. And it is radiant and possesses certain of the major and minor marks. So the major and minor marks are the marks that we talk about of the Buddha, of the enlightened one. So, having certain qualities and so on. So the next it says, since this state is an apparitional experience of the mental body, it is called the mental body of apparitional experience in the intermediate state. At this time, if you are to be born as a god, you will come to experience the apparitional field of the realms of the gods. Depending on whichever of the realms you are able to take birth in, whether that of the anti-gods, humans, animals, anguished spirits, or hell beings, you will come to experience its particular apparitional field. So does everybody remember that there's 6 realms? We talk about the 6 human realms. Does anybody need a refresher on that? Everybody understand? Okay. So here it's saying whether you're to be born in any one of these realms, that you will experience its apparitional field. So it's kind of like an apparition, this kind of for lack of a better word, this ghostly, kind of nebulous kind of field, if you will. So then next word, it says, therefore, past means that for 3.5 days you will possess the bodily form, which is a product of your past habitual tendencies and existences. So this is that karmic body that is being blown about by the karmic winds. And emergent means that after 3.5 days, the aspirational field of the next realms into which you are to be born will emerge. Hence, the expressions past and emergent existences. So what this is saying is that these fields will rise up, these aspirational fields will rise up before you. And you'll be saying, oh, I don't want to go there, or maybe I want to go there, whatever, so it's within this mental body. This is not unlike deep meditation. If you've had deep meditation and you're going through this and you recognize that you are in meditation, and you recognize the thoughts that come up, because if you're in a meditation, you're not paying attention to thoughts. You shouldn't be. That's the definition of meditation, is no thought. But thoughts are coming and they're passing right through. But when those thoughts come up, those thoughts can represent a field to you. And you can either let yourself fall into that field and it has an appearance to it, or you can rebuke that field. You can push that field away. You can say, I'm not going to go there because I can maintain my meditation. That's how you stay away from that field, by being able to re-engage in the meditation, by transcending further from that thought that is pulling you down. But if you're pulled down, then there's this field of what this means and so on. And sometimes it can be unpleasant. Sometimes it can be very happy, very pleasant. So it's getting familiar with both of these that is the point here. To not fear any of this. To allow yourself to experience all of this. And as you gain experience, what do you gain? You gain wisdom. We learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. And it's through this wisdom that not only do we help ourselves, but more importantly, we're helping other beings. So this is recognizing that we are experiencing this ourselves, that we experience this in our meditations.
Lance,
Yes.
is this kind of like just slipped my mind. What do you call that? I'll get back to you on it. Has something to do with astral projecting. Is this?
I don't know anything about astral projecting.
I
I don't know. It's a new age nebulous term to me. I flew right through that.
Okay, it sounded a lot like,
but I do know this. It speaks of dualistic nature. Astral projections speak of dualistic nature.
no, not astral projection.
Well, then I don't know anything about it.
No. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now page 152. Whatever apparitional fields emerge at this time, do not be drawn by them. Do not become attached to them. Do not cling to them. If you cling to them and become attached, you will continue to roam amongst the 6 classes of beings and be turning towards suffering. Although until yesterday, the intermediate state of reality arose within you, you did not recognize it. As a result, you have been compelled to wander here. Now, just as it was formerly introduced to you by your spiritual teacher, if you are able to cultivate undistractedly a recognition of the essential nature of reality, if you can rest and abide without grasping and without activity directly in the unwavering naked awareness, which is radiance and emptiness conjoined, you can attain liberation and avoid wandering yet further towards the womb entrance. If you are not able to achieve this recognition, then visualize your spiritual teacher as being seated on the crown of your head and be intensely and fervently devoted. This is most important. Again and again, do not be distracted. So this page here is just loaded with stuff. So these apparitional fields. So we don't want to be drawn to them. I was saying in your meditation, you don't want to be drawn to these things. You know, this is what pulls you out of your meditation. So when you're in the Bardo like this, you don't want to be distracted by these. You know, you want to be guided by your spiritual teacher. Just as now I'm in the middle of this, the 4th line here, it says, now, just as it was formerly introduced to you by your spiritual teacher, if you are unable to cultivate undistractedly a recognition of the essential nature. So this whole thing, the spiritual teacher, you should think of Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava as your spiritual teacher. Don't get me in the way. Think of Padmasambhava. These are Padmasambhava's words. This is Padmasambhava's text. This is Padmasambhava's teaching to us. You know, I'm merely trying to help you to understand, you know, and look, there may be mistakes. There may be things that I say wrong. You know, my intention is pure, but sometimes I may be confused myself. So we shouldn't take, me as the Lama here, as being able to be as pure as Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. So that's why we need to independently study this book on our own. If you're relying on what I'm trying to communicate to you, or whatever other, mortal Lama is trying to communicate to you, it can be contaminated. So keep it as pure as possible. Trust in yourself to be able to contemplate this, to be able to, bring this in and experience this. Because this is where you test this, is through your own experience. So it says, if you are able to cultivate undistractedly a recognition of the essential nature of reality, the essential nature here is beyond words, is beyond all this intellectualization. It's to be able to experience this true nature. So you have to give yourself the opportunity to meditate, to be able to do that. And to get there, you have to go through contemplation to get there, but it's this process that's in place. If you can rest and abide without grasping and without activity, directly in the unwavering naked awareness. So if you can abide, if you can sit in meditation, and you can do this without grasping and without activity, What does the activity mean? The activity means chasing after a lot of these thoughts. You know, let the thoughts come. Some of these thoughts are going to be new, but the point is to be able to get comfortable with these things and recognize them within yourself. What it also means is that you're going through the process of eliminating the emotions, the 20 emotions that I mentioned to you earlier today. And, you know, so are you chasing those things? Are you chasing arrogance? Or are you letting that rest and say, I don't even have to worry about whether it's arrogant or not. I'm going to experience it. If I find that it becomes arrogant at some point, that's fine. I'll cut it off. But meanwhile, I need to be able to allow myself to be able to experience this true nature. So without grasping and without activity, directly in the unwavering naked awareness, which is radiance and emptiness conjoined. Radiance and emptiness conjoined. Now this are things that we should know before really entering into the Bardo Thodol study, the book study. If we don't understand what radiance, what luminance, what emptiness, what these mean, or at least to have an idea and at least a reference to where to go to be able to go back and reconsider these, we need to have these things. We need to understand these things. So this radiance is like the radiance of the sun, you know, is the easiest thing to remember. That here, that by its own nature, the sun is supplying light and heat for all this solar system to be able to be manifest and to function. Without the sun, all these planets and all this stuff would just start flying away into the rest of the cosmos and other places, but the sun is keeping it in check. So this radiance is like our inner radiance, that all this wisdom and all this skillful means is all being held in place by, figuratively. And the emptiness is the notion that all this is just compounded understandings and compounded conceptualizations that we're using to be able to wrap our human minds around this. But our human minds only last as long as we're breathing. When we stop breathing, it's all let go. And we go into this bardo of spirituality. So understanding emptiness is very important. And, you know, we don't have time to go into that. You know, it's assumed that you have an understanding of emptiness to get into this book study. If you need some help with this, then let me know and we can talk about it and I can give you some guidance. But for right now, we have to leave it there. But the point here is that this radiance of wisdom, this radiance of ability to hold this all in check, and this emptiness quality of all this, that it is by itself, it is not existent. It is conceptual. And that these two things can be conjoined. You can attain liberation and avoid wandering yet further towards the womb entrances. If you can't let this go, if you can't be attached to this, then you can't be liberated. To be liberated is to be free of attachments. So therefore, we have to develop this sense of transcendence, of liberation, of freedom, all these things, you know, to avoid this wandering meaning that we're going around looking, searching, trying to find this, trying to find answers and so on. You know, here we're saying that the freedom has an answer that as a human being, we can't recognize. It is beyond our comprehension. So we have to liberate our intellect. And it says, and avoid wandering yet further towards the womb entrances. So what that means is to be born again, to the womb entrances, that we're going to be born somehow or another. Instead of remaining as a Bardo being in this Bardo here, because there's still opportunity to be rescued. I know I said last time in part 2 that the end, that was the end of the wrathful deities and their ability to rescue. But now here in the Bardo of becoming, there is opportunity to be rescued. And this opportunity comes by way of your practice, comes by way of your guru, comes by way of your meditational deity. So we'll see how this works as we move along, but there's always that. If you are not able to achieve this recognition, then visualize your spiritual teacher as being seated on the crown of your head and be intensely and fervently devoted. This is most important, and again, do not be distracted. So many of the deity yoga practices, actually all of the deity yoga practices, all climax with the deity being on your head during the time that you're seated in your meditation posture and your practice. And that deity then dissolves into light and then enters into you through the center channel of your body and comes into your heart, and you become inseparable with the deity. So this is what we're, trying to recall, that we will have practiced this over and over again. This deity yoga, this union. Yoga means union. This union with the deity, the spiritual teacher, the Lama, the Guru, all within yourself. So we repeat this. We would repeat this, these 3 pages here, we will repeat this 3 times if we're reciting this for someone. If we're studying this, we should recite it 3 times. We should, we should really have really brought this into our mindset, into our mindfulness, that this is what we're doing, to read this over and over again. So now we go to page 153. If anybody has questions or comments, just speak up. So now page 153. Oh, child of Buddha nature, Ricky Boo, Kunchok Bema Dorje, listen carefully yet again. The phrase complete with all sense faculties and the power of unobstructed movement means that even though you may have been blind, deaf, or lame, while you were alive, now in the intermediate state, your eyes see forms, your ears hear sounds, and all your sense faculties clear and complete. Hence, the Tantra, or the continuum, says, complete with all sense faculties. Recognize this sensory clarity, for it is a sign that you have died and are wandering in the intermediate state. Remember this oral instruction. So this is kind of like your mind catching up with your meditation and saying, oh, here I am in this meditation state, and I can go and do these things. I can think of all these things and I can go there immediately. If I want to be meditating in a cave in Tibet, I can just close my eyes and I can just transport myself there in a moment. Now, you're not literally doing it, your body, but your heart mind is there. So that's what we're preparing as we prepare our meditation practices and so on, to be able to do that and so on. So here we have this power within this Bardo of rebirth to be able to do this. It says, even though you may have been blind, deaf, or lame, here now you have all your senses restored. Everything is perfect. You don't have a physical body anymore, but yet you have the attributes of having a perfect body. But it's all in this spiritual, kind of visionary form. Remember the oral instructions. So remember what is being said here. This is, you're reciting this to somebody now, and you're giving them these oral instructions, and they should have had some experience with this during their lifetime. So for ourselves, as we're doing a study here, we should be remembering, we should be listening to ourselves and our recitations and what it is that we're doing. So now the next paragraph, it says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje." Unobstructed means that the body which you now have is a mental body. Your awareness is now separated from its physical support. Therefore, this is not a body of solid form. Accordingly, you now have the ability to move unobstructedly, penetrating to the core of all of its forms. You can pass through Mount Sumeru and through dwellings, the earth, stones, boulders, mountains. Indeed, other than your mother's womb and the indestructible seat, you can pass back and forth even through Mount Sumeru itself. So this is restating what I said a moment ago, and that is, you can transport yourselves through anywhere that you want to go. So it's like your vivid imagination, if you will, your vivid vision of being able to do that. Time has no meaning. Location has no meaning. It says that you can even go through Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru, I think I explained a few weeks ago, is like this, for lack of a better word, this mountain, this column that everything is kind of spinning around. That all this creation, this universe, this spiritual universe is all spinning around. This is the core, and this core is where all the gods are, where all the goddesses are, all these karmic beings, all the high ones are on this core, on this Mount Sumeru, Mount Meru, sometimes it's called. But you can't go into the womb. It says, other than your mother's womb and the indestructible seat. You're not ready to go into the womb. You don't want to go into the womb yet. If you can, you don't want to go at all. And the indestructible seat means the seat of the Buddha, of being the Buddha, because you're not ready to go there either. You're still in this nebulous Bardo of becoming. So you can pass back and forth even through Mount Sumeru itself. So during this time, you have this ability to move about, So
Lance,
yes.
quick question. So
Yes.
about the ability to move through things and in space, are those related to or influenced by our karma, or are we restricted to move only to those locations that we have seen and we have encountered in our previous lives?
It's all karma. It's all karma. We're
So
not a Buddha body. We're a karmic body.
Right. So if we haven't been to one of our, you know,
So because we can do this doesn't mean that we have to do this.
Okay.
And part of the trap is thinking that we have to.
huh,
Oh, I'm such a good meditator. Today I went to Milarepa's cave.
well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So even at that time, I mean, you're getting bombarded with so many new things that your mental body it can get overwhelmed. But you have to have that clarity of mind to discern like what is important for me and what do I need to prioritize in order to attain benefit.
Well, that's exactly right. So
All the-
therefore your practice in this bardo of living now.
All this distraction.
Where do you get that ability to be able to control that mental body? You think it just comes to you, you know?
I wish.
You have to work for it. You gotta develop that. So that's what this is all about. Yes, we can be bombarded, or maybe we just have some little nudges. It depends on our karmic wins. It depends on our karmic body. You know, how much, if you use this word pressure, how much pressure is being applied by all these karmic things. If you have simplified, there's very little karmic pressure. But if you have been, you know, just immersed in this ocean of suffering of all these choices, all these things and everything, then you're being pushed about and pushed and shoved and pulled down and all these things because of all these karmic pressures. So remember the analogy of the spiral. As we go around the spiral first, we got all these things happening. And as we rise up the spiral, things get simpler and simpler and simpler and cleaner and purer and so on like that.
Very good.
So it's our choice. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just listening. I was just taking it in. Thank you, Lance.
Okay. So now the bottom of page 153, it says, remember thee, and then to the next page, remember the advice of your spiritual teacher, for this ability is a sign that you are wandering in the intermediate state of rebirth. Recognize this and pray to the meditational deity, Mahakarunika. So if you're seeing all this stuff, it means that you're not as pure as maybe you'd like to be, because you've got all this pressure. To use that word now, I think it's, you know, you got all this pressure on you to do this and do that. It should be very simple. And the meditational deity, to remind everybody, the meditational deity is Mahakarunika. Now you can use whatever meditational deity you like. This Mahakarunika, Maha means great. Karuna means compassionate. And Ika means the embodiment of that, the body of that. So this is referring to Avalokiteshvara, the great compassionate one. So this is like the ultimate or the universal compassionate one. This Mahakarunika is the embodiment of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas' compassion. But if Jesus is your meditational deity, fine. If Moses is your meditational deity, fine. If Mohammed or Jehovah or whomever is your meditation, that's all fine. Because the essence of all of them is pure. You know, what's been stepped on is what human beings have stepped on. their egos and created all these rules and so on, all these qualifications and so on. But if the essence of any of these meditational deities is predicated on some behavior, some conduct or something like that, then you're chasing something that you shouldn't be chasing. The essence is the pure loving kindness, the compassion, the joy, and the equanimity, what we call bodhicitta, that all these beings share. So now the next paragraph. Oh, child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje. The phrase, endowed with miraculous abilities derived from past actions, does not mean that you necessarily possess any enlightened attributes or any miraculous ability and meditative stability, but that you have a miraculous ability which results from your past actions and accords with your past actions. Consequently, you will have the ability to circumambulate Mount Sumeru and the 4 continents in an instant. Merely in the time it takes you to withdraw or withhold or hold out an arm, you can travel instantly anywhere you wish just by thinking of your desired destination. So this miraculous ability is miraculous from our point of view, from an ordinary human being's point of view. But from a Bardo being like this, it's the everyday mode of travel. So again, it's a question of, do you want to do that? You can do it, but do you want to do it? You know, or do you want to be liberated? You know, so liberation is still in question here. Or is all this seeking in our mental body, in the spiritual body, is this mental seeking a means to be able to find liberation? Or can we just stop and let liberation come? Or are we always seeking it? And if that's not an analogy to our life as being human beings, I don't know what is. Are we always going to the next thing? We're always looking for the next teacher. We're always looking for the next book. We're always looking for the next practice. Or can we be satisfied with just one? And having a practice to be able to experience the essence of that true nature.
Yeah, Lance, from reading all this, you know, I mean, I cannot help thinking of what William was saying just a minute earlier about astral projections. There are plenty of books that explain the same phenomenon. Like, you know, when yogis attain this abilities, they can do this kind of traveling in their meditational state. But I think what's important to me, it's just like, you said, to not be distracted by these abilities, because the mind can be like blown by, wow, just how is this possible? This is my goal right here. This is amazing. And all of a sudden you're like going sideways.
Right. So I never studied astral, planes and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a
So if there's a parallel, that's fine. But the parallel is that it is a waste of time. Or maybe not, maybe that's a strong word. Maybe it's not a waste of time, but it is needless activity that is distracting from the goal of non-activity. So I think you just said that yourself.
yeah.
Now, instances of certain things like this have been written in other sutras. The Buddha speaks of it itself. But he also says when you get distracted, it's like water that's standing still. You need to keep flowing. You need to keep running towards our main goal is the ocean. Because if you get distracted with these little abilities, and you stop thinking that, oh, this is it. What happened to sitting water? It starts rotting, gets stagnant. It says keep flowing. This is just a small taste, but don't get distracted. It seems like, as ordinary beings, whatever accomplishments we get, we get sidetracked very easily. It's hard for us to let go, and thinking that this might be it, this having these abilities or having this power or, clairvoyance, that, we're here, but it's that ordinary mind that keeps us, holds us back, it seems like.
And I think that this is very interesting to think of having the kind of karma that Adrian and Tom are describing, and William mentioned, where you could perceive this as something positive and need to deal with it on that level. But isn't it also possible that by this point of time in this Bardo, many of the beings who have arrived there are actually experiencing these abilities in a negative way, that the movement is agitation and not being able to rest, and the kind of clairvoyance, clairaudience is sensory overload to some people with certain types of karma. So there's this whole spectrum, of course, that goes along with karma. But not all of it, I think, necessarily means, as we're reading this for others, that at this point they're necessarily experiencing this as kind of a threshold level. Oh, isn't this interesting? I'd kind of like to play with these abilities, that maybe in fact they're really feeling agitated and overwhelmed. And I'm just mentioning that. I don't know if that's right to be thinking that way, but thinking of it from the point of view of holding this practice for another and what we might be assuming, I'm just finding myself tending to open it up and think, wow, there really could be a huge range of experience going on here.
These here are called cities and are what did you call them, Tom? Accomplishments. But
Not the goal.
they're not the gold. They're you could be enlightened without having any of these, without going through any of that, because so many people get hung up on these that it's a stumbling block in your forward movement rather than a stepping stone. It's an impediment. Not that it's not fun to do it. Not that it's not fun to do it, but it does have a tendency that makes you want to stay right there because you're so great at doing this here and not move forward.
Hi, can I say something?
Sure.
Once again, I think it came up last week where I said we should be doing something about, especially this Bardo, now while we're alive, asking our higher powers to help us, to give us, help us to heal, help us to work with our karmas now, asking for positive feedback and help us to work these things out now. and not wait until we're there. You know what I mean? Not wait until you're at the end and say, gee whiz, I should have been working on this for the last 76 years I've been around. But anyway, and I know you've said this to us many times throughout this course, but now it comes to a conclusion here that we have a task to do, and we're lucky enough to still be alive to work it. And that's what we should be doing right now, solving our karmic issues and learning how to deal in a position, as you said, to without a body, to just be a mental body. Can you imagine that? Here we are, a mental body, we're a full body in the living form. And it's really hard to work with a lot of these issues we have to work with day in and day out, all these emotions. Well, gee whiz, I'm going to have to deal with it later on once I'm dead. Too late, too late. I think that the way this book was written, it says you have a task to do, and it starts today, the day you read the book.
Yes, very good. I agree with you, and I agree with what Thomas, what William has said, and Adrian, and Tom, and Debbie. You've all said good things, and being able to recognize this, and that's what this Bardo of living is about: is being able to deal with these things now in a contemplative way, and so that we can develop our one-pointed mindfulness to become the Buddha in this lifetime, to at least have glimpses of it.
So in meditation, ask your higher power, ask for help, ask for guidance on how to prepare for.
Well, where does that power? Where does that power come from? Is it out there?
Yes, it's the universal creator. I'll use a neutral word.
Well, here's another thought for you. How about that? It all comes from in here.
Well, I know we are all one. So I mean, when I talk from out there.
Don't think of it that way.
From us, yeah, you're right. I know we are all one. I understand.
That's one of the fundamental changes, that it all happens within here. As long as we're thinking it happens out there, that's outside of ourselves. It's somebody else's fault.
No.
It's somebody else's job.
No, I see.
No, it's my job.
That's true. Thank you for flagging that for me.
So yeah, so the deity yoga, the deities are the perfected qualities of being a human being. So who better to guide us than a perfected being? And those deities are within ourselves. We begin to recognize them within ourselves. That's why we practice deity yoga. Union with the deity. Union with the perfected deities, the meditational Buddhas. They become our guides. They're not out there, they're in here.
I look up to the sky in my meditation, and so I think of it as, you're right, I think of it as, I get messaging. I get messaging, whether it's from me or whatever I want to believe it to be, from past loved ones or whatever, deities, Buddhas. So in a sense, I am communicating with a spiritual being, I believe, but we are all one and we are all attached, and that's why we're able to communicate and message each other.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
That's my belief.
Okay. 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 Anybody else? Can we move on? Okay. So now we're on the second paragraph here of page 154. It says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje." Oh, no, excuse me, we did that. That was about the miraculous abilities. Okay, so we did that. It says, so the next to last sentence here in that page, it says, do not be fascinated by these diverse and haphazard miraculous abilities. Do not be fascinated by them. Do not indulge in them. Of all the things which you have the ability to recall, there is not one which you cannot make manifest. Let me say that again. Do not indulge in them. Of all the things which you have the ability to recall, to remember, there is not one which you cannot make manifest. So in other words, all these things are within your power to manifest. The good things and the bad things and all the things in between. So be careful. It's real easy to get lost. Then it says you have the ability now to manifest any aspect of your past unimpededly. Therefore, recognize this and pray to your spiritual teacher. Pray to your spiritual teacher. You know, so we talk about, you know, that in Vajrayana, we talk about the Yidam. The Yidam is our spiritual teacher, our meditational teacher, our meditational guide. And we practice them so that we become the embodiment of that meditational deity, teacher, or many of them. And they all have the same qualities in terms of bodhicitta. They all have the same compassion. The thing that differentiates them is their, or I should say, are their activities. The thing that differentiates them. So Tara is fearlessness. Medicine Buddha is healing. Vajrapani is power. Vajrasattva is purification. So all these, so when we do deity yoga practices, we begin to recognize these, we begin to see this, and we begin to recognize it not in intellectual terms, but in terms of a light, but not a light that we see with our eyes, but a light that is radiant, the quality that ignites us. So then the next paragraph here, it says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Kunchuk Pema Dorje. As for the phrase, visible to those similar in kind and through pure clairvoyance, the words similar in kind mean that in the intermediate state, those of a similar kind of birth will come to perceive one another. Thus, in the case of those similar in kind who are to be born as gods, the gods to be perceive one another. Similarly, those who are similar in kind to any of the 6 classes of beings will come to perceive one another. Do not become attached as the sight of these beings. Do not be attached at the sight of these beings. Meditate on the meditational deity, Mahakarunika." So in this state, you know, we begin to not only recognize our own body and being able to move about, you know, it's a spiritual body, being able to move about, but we recognize others who have that same potential. Whether it's hell beings, or it's hungry ghost beings, or it's animal beings, or human beings, or jealous God beings, or God beings, the Deva beings, we begin to recognize them. And these should be characteristic of our thought of what's going on. I'm seeing this, I'm recognizing this, what's going on? Are these the same as me? And going back to your meditation, sitting on your cushion, You know, that we have to develop that. Who are our friends? What's pulling us away? Is it the hell beings that are pulling us away? Or maybe it's the other human beings. Maybe it's our Sangha members that are pulling us away, pulling us down. Why? We need to answer those questions. We need to ask ourselves those questions. Is it the God? Do I want to be the God? Why do I want to be the God? Prepared to be a God? Oh, that'd be a great thing. Oh, that satisfies my ego. So there's lots of traps built into that. The point is to not be going down these paths. Then it says, now I'm on the third sentence from the bottom. It says, the words visible through pure clairvoyance do not refer to the clairvoyance which results from the meritorious qualities of the gods and so forth, but they do refer to the pure clairvoyance with which those of genuine meditative concentration perceive. However, this is not a clairvoyance that can perceive the beings of the intermediate state at all times. If you are intent on seeing beings of like nature in this intermediate state, then they will be perceived. If you are not so intent, they will not be perceived. This clairvoyance will dissolve as soon as your concentration is distracted. This clairvoyance will dissolve as soon as your concentration is distracted. So this clairvoyance can be mistaken by habitual tendency. This clairvoyance can be seen to be an earned power. And as that power is earned in our mind, it becomes an ego trap. I knew somebody who was an artist and who was a pretty high person, really had a lot of achievement, a lot of attainment, and so on, and would paint portraits of people. And the thing that he was trying to portray was their aura, this color aura. And it became his hallmark. It became his attachment. Maybe he was able to do that, but then it became this thing that, not only was he doing it, for, to help people, but he was making money off of it. So he may have had pure clairvoyance in the beginning, but somewhere along the line, it got corrupted. So this clairvoyance, we need to be aware of. We need to recognize this and not be led about by the clairvoyance. The clairvoyance becomes being able to see the road signs, but not necessarily going and collecting all the road signs and telling people of their road signs. It's your road signs. It's your clairvoyance.
Lance, isn't this also suggesting, related to that if you haven't experienced and stabilized that kind of clairvoyance in your meditative concentration, that it's not likely to last very long anyway? In this Bardo, it's talking about it will dissolve as soon as your concentration is distracted. It's the last line at the top of 156.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. So again,
it
comes back, like Jerry was saying before, you stabilize now. And that's good. If you don't have it here, you're not going to have it there. So is at least how I'm interpreting this, rightly or wrongly.
Well, it'll break apart. It'll break apart
Uh-huh.
in two ways. Like you just said, if your mind becomes distracted from your one-pointed mindfulness and is being pulled away, that clairvoyance goes away. But also what it hasn't said here yet is that clairvoyance will naturally dissipate, or the need for it, or the attachment to it will disappear also as we progress along the path. As we move to the next higher level, that clairvoyance just becomes, just a feature of our evolution, so to speak. They speak of it in the Bodhisattva Bhumis.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. So now the next paragraph, 155. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Bema Dorje. As for the, did I just read that? Sorry.
We're in 156.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yep. 156. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje. With a body having qualities such as these just described, you will once again see your homeland and your relatives as if in a dream. Yet, even though you call out to your relatives, they will not reply. You will see your family and relatives crying and realize, I am dead. What should I do now? Thinking this, you will be overwhelmed by intense suffering. You will feel like a fish expelled from the water, writhing on hot sand. Although you will suffer on realizing that you are dead, this is not helpful to you now. If you have a spiritual teacher, pray to your spiritual teacher. Pray to the meditational deity, Mahakarunika. Although you will feel attached to your relatives, this is not helpful to you now. Do not be attached. Pray to the Mahakarunika and be free of suffering, awe, and fear. So I think this clairvoyance is something like that too, being able to see, the family, seeing those who are still living in the Bardo. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Bema Dorje, your present awareness, freed from its physical support, is being blown by the coursing vital energy of past actions, those karmic winds that I was talking about before. Choicelessly, riding the horse of breath, it drifts directionless, like a feather on the wind. To all those who are crying, you will call out, I am here, do not cry, but they will not hear you. Yet again, you will realize, I am dead, and experience a very profound despair. Do not be absorbed by this suffering. Now, this has a very interesting parallel. And that is, what I've constantly been saying about meditation, developing meditation. Because as you are doing this, and as you are developing this, these accomplishments, the siddhas, the siddhis that William was mentioning before, that you become like you're invisible in your really engage more and more, closer and closer. And as our lifestyle has changed, that it's less dramatic than if we were to say, today or tomorrow we go into a meditation and that our friends, our family can't see us anymore, or that we're not there anymore. But as we get closer on the that spiral getting closer, the more we can have episodes like that. And in the film, for the benefit of all beings, Garchen Rinpoche, there's examples of that where he just disappears, where he might be sitting there, but some people can't see him. The guards could not see him. Other people may have been able to see him. Other lamas may have been able to see him, but the guards couldn't see him. Michael, are you back with us? All right. So then we come to the middle paragraph on the page 157. Continuously there will be grayness, like autumn twilight, with neither light nor day, night nor day. The intermediate states between death and birth will last for 1 week, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7 weeks, up to 49 days in all. It is said that suffering in the intermediate state of rebirth will last, generally speaking, for 21 days. However, since the duration of this state is based on past actions, a specific number of days is not certain. So to get to this point, we would have gone through a week in the peaceful, we would have gone through 2 weeks in the wrathful, another week in the other wrathful, and so on. So by the time we get to this, we have 3 weeks left in the 7 weeks of being in the Bardo, as it's being explained here. But again, these numbers this is a relative sense to be able to give us some kind of understanding about how this functions. So now the last sentence, it says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje, at this time, the fierce, turbulent, utterly unbearable hurricane of past actions will be swirling behind you, driving you on. Do not be afraid. This is your own bewildered perception. Before you, there will be a terrifying, dense, and unfathomable darkness, echoing with cries of strike and kill. Do not be afraid." So this goes to what Adrian was saying before, that there's all this stuff happening and so on. Well, the stuff is happening if you have manifested that stuff. If your karmic wins, if your karmic body is possessed by all that stuff. But if you've led a very pure meditative life, a contemplative life and everything, then that is going to be minimized. You're still going to have karmic wins, you're still going to have propensities, but they're not going to be as intense as what is being conveyed here. And these things are saying strike and kill, and this is that these are our inner demons, that want to render us under their power. So they see us as this spiritual being, and they want to annihilate that spirituality so that they can have dominion over us. So then back on page 158, it says, "Moreover, in the case of very negative beings, a swarm of carnivorous ogres will arise, executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect, brandishing an array of weapons and screaming out aggressively, 'Strike and kill.' You will imagine that you are being pursued by terrifying wild animals. You will imagine that you are being pursued by hordes of people, and that you are struggling through snow, through rain, through blizzards, and through darkness. There will be the sound of mountains crumbling, of lakes flooding, of fires spreading, and the roar of fierce winds springing up. Terrified, you will try to flee wherever you can, but your path ahead will suddenly be cut off by the 3 precipices, one white, one red, one black. All 3 awesomely frightening, you will feel as if you are on the verge of falling. So all these things are manifesting from our past life, from our past existence, from our karmic body is manifesting all these things and is manifesting all these conditions in front of us, or we're perceiving these conditions in front of us as these malevolent obstacles, these malevolent conditions. And so then we come to this point of these precipices. And this is classic. You know, you've heard this in dream analysis before, I'm sure, and so on, you know, of falling, you know, from a precipice, from a cliff, and so on. So here it says there's one white, one red, and one black, all three awesomely frightening. You will feel as if you're on the verge of falling. And it goes to the next page. It says, "Oh, child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchokpe Madorje. These are not truly precipices. They are aversion, attachment, and delusion, respectfully." So the white one is aversion, the red one is attachment, and the black one is delusion or ignorance. Know now that this is the intermediate state of rebirth, and call to the meditational deity Mahakarunika by name and pray, "O Lord Mahakarunika, spiritual teacher and precious jewel, save me, Konchokpe Madorje, from your falling into the lower existences. Pray with deep commitment in this way. Do not forget." So here, Mahakarunika, your spiritual deity, can help you, can come to your rescue, can keep you from falling into the lower realms. If you have a strong practice, this won't even materialize. But if your practice is weak, if you have no practice at all, this will materialize unfailingly. At this stage, in the case of those individuals who have gathered the accumulations of merit and pristine cognition and have sincerely practiced the teachings, one will be welcomed by visions of abundant riches, and one will experience manifold, blissful, and happy states. So here again, at this stage, the state of those individuals, the accumulation of merit and pristine cognition. Pristine cognition is clear light, is having gone into the meditative state and experienced the meditative state, experience the light of the meditational deities, the red light of Amitabha, the blue light of Ascobia, the yellow light of Ratnasambhava, the green light of Amagog City, and so on. So we familiarize ourselves with that. And to get to that point, we would have gathered merit, because we would have been doing good deeds. We would have been practicing good deeds for the benefit of others. And so we would have that merit to help us through what might be difficult times like this. We may not even recognize these things because of our merit and because of our pristine cognition. It would not even have entered our field of vision, so to speak. Instead, we will have visions of abundant riches, and one will experience manifold, blissful, and happy states. So these blissful and happy states and these abundant riches would be our wisdom, would be our wisdom jewels, would be our skillful means, our ability to be able to withstand, you know, the pulling away, the pulling down, and so on, like that. Manifold, blissful, and happy states of being enlightened, of being a Buddha, of being a Dakini, being all these different levels that we have experienced through our practices. In the case of those individuals who are indifferent or deluded, who have been neither virtuous nor negative, one will experience neither pleasure nor pain, but only an apathetic delusion. Whichever of these happens, O child of Buddha nature, whatever objects of desire or blissful or happy states appear before you, do not be attached to them, do not cling to them. Be free from attachment and clinging, and mentally offer these experiences to your spiritual teacher and to the three precious jewels, particularly if the visions are of indifference, devoid of happiness or pain. Abide in the experience of the Great Seal, where awareness is naturally present without meditation and without distraction. This is very important. So I wanted to read all of this together because it's saying that if we are indifferent, if we don't recognize it, if we're dull to this, we're ignorant of this, and we do not respond, we have an apathy to this. Maybe we've been exposed to it, but we don't believe it. We didn't practice it at all. So it's saying that in either case, whether we are being delivered from this, or we are avoiding this because of our indifference, that we should not be attached to either of these. Do not cling to these, and offer these experiences to your spiritual teacher. So this offering now, this is the first time this has been expressed, and this is a very special thing about offering. One of the things that we learn through our practices is the practice of offering, of generosity, and offering to our teachers, offering to our meditational deities, as well as offering to those who are in need of help. The Buddhas, our teachers, they don't need our help. The people who are suffering, they do need our help. But the object of offering is to put yourself in a place of realization, of recognition, of humility, of humbleness, of recognizing that your teachers have brought you many, many, many valuable, priceless things, and that you are making offerings to them. Now you don't have anything to give them except your bodhicitta, except your loving kindness, except your compassion, your joy, and your equanimity, to give them the sameness of what they are as you are, to offer that to them, to say, I am the same as you, and this is within yourself. And then we're offering this to other beings as a means to be able to relieve them from their suffering, to be able to help them through their suffering. So to your spiritual teacher and to the three precious jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, particularly if the visions are of indifference, devoid of happiness or pain, abide in the experience of the Great Seal. The Great Seal is the mind of meditation, is the mind of Mahamudra, the mind of liberation, or Dzogchen. You may be familiar with the Great Perfection instead of the Great Seal. Same thing. The experience of to abide in the experience of the Great Seal, where awareness is naturally present, where the natural state, if you are there, that if you are in Mahamudra, your natural state is the presence of seeing all things, recognizing all things, but not being attached or have aversion to any of that. Without meditation and without distraction. This is very important. Without meditation and without distraction. So what this means is that we don't necessarily need to have the meditative mind at this state, at this point, at this juncture, that we have developed. If we are in this Mahamudra state, that we are in a state of post-meditation and meditation that are indecipherable from each other. It's the same thing. And again, we practice that while we're on the cushion. We practice that while we're a human being. To practice being able to liberate and be able to take that with us when we get up off the cushion, that post-meditation. After a time, it fades, but we know that we can get back to it again. So the next day we do our practice and we can get back there again. And maybe that period of post-meditation will last longer, or maybe over the course of a year, it begins to get stronger and so on. But we see that how that begins to manifest and so on. The stronger that becomes, that the more we go into these Bardo states, the more that carries us through those Bardo states. And then without distraction, because of our accomplishments, there are no distractions. We are not have a propensity to follow non-virtue, confusion. So I think here we have to leave it here for tonight. So can anybody give me some feedback? Tell me what you think about this.
So far, what you've taught, it's not necessarily just Buddhism. It's more universal. It's for all humanity, not just for Buddhists or of any particular religion or following, but it's universal. It's for all sentient beings.
Then why are we studying it as Buddhists?
But it seems like the Buddhist way, I guess, he simplified it or made it so that it was understandable or comprehensible to us. But these teachings should be to everyone. To everyone. I mean, it's
Well, that's correct. You're right. And it's, and the Buddhism not only articulates this, but it gives a path to be able to move through this.
It seems very, very essential.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting out of this so far.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is
Adrian? I'm sorry, Gary spoke first. Go ahead, Gary.
I'll just be brief. This is a class or a teaching or a practice that really can never end, because every line to me needs to be processed and considered and understood. It's not something, it's not like a class that you complete. It's this class is in part of the Buddhist life and part of our life is a way of life, I think. We go over it and over it and over it until we understand, which will never really be complete, what it means. But we have to continue to absorb the full length and breadth of it. That doesn't mean necessarily that you have to teach it to us forever, but we have to continue to read and study this Pesha, basically, in this Bardo,
Yes, thank you.
as long as we're capable of doing so.
Yes. Adrian?
Well, to me, the information that we went over tonight kind of like solidified the answer for me that, I for some questions that I was just kind of like wondering for quite a while now, that it is important to focus on the path and just put away those distractions that are not necessary. Of course, no distractions are necessary, but we become fascinated of it at some point, you know, in one way or the other. It was very good. It was very good in that sense.
Very good. Thank you. Debbie, did you have something you wanted to say? Because you had your microphone off for a minute there.
Yeah, I was just thinking kind of the arc from the beginning and through the Bardo of reality to where we are now, just what a shift this is. And on the one hand, it's continuous, but on the other hand, we've just come from the peaceful and wrathful deities with all of their Sambhogakaya displays and our attempts to recognize and merge with that. And now we're in quite a different space, but still very much brought there by our karma and perceiving based on that and relying on whatever practice we've developed in this life and in previous lives. But it has already, and we're just at the beginning of this section, just a real stripped down bare bones feeling for it, and bringing up the great seal and great perfection just has that as its heart. You know, the essence now is not so much about the Sambhogakaya displays, but us coming back to that ability in ourselves to recognize our true nature and rest in it, in spite of all of this turmoil and all of these things that we might be perceiving as going on around us that could so easily distract us. So it has an intensity to it that feels very different to me from the intensity of the wrathful deities, which was certainly very intense. But there's a very different quality to this because it really feels like I'm meeting my own personal brew of karmic tendencies and distractions in this Bardo. So far, we've just begun.
Well, yeah, and just to underscore what you just said, you know, on page 157 in the middle paragraph there, it says continuously there will be grayness like autumn twilight with neither day nor night. So this is kind of that quality of that, you know? Yep.
If I may say something else, to me, the more I read and think about this, there are just two words that are coming to my mind, either distraction or opportunity. And right now we're just gaining the wisdom to make the right choices.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question?
I think it's an affirmation of the notion to let go of our fascination with the world.
Okay. Does anybody think of the world as a workplace?
I do every day.
But not
Oh, yeah,
necessarily, not
definitely.
necessarily as a physical workplace, but more as a spiritual workplace.
A workplace
Oh.
to benefit others, of course.
I mean, as long as you put your intent for the benefit of all beings and enlightenment, I think anything you do can be considered as that.
Okay. All right, well, we're drawing to an end here, so I don't want to keep everybody. Just to remind everybody that if you're interested, we are reciting the King of Prayers, the aspirational prayer for good actions. If you want to, hear this idea being articulated, that what we are doing is working for the benefit of others, and what that means is very profound. So we'll be on Monday evenings, we're doing that in our Buddhism 101. So I think I've sent everybody an email if you'd like to join us. So anyway, we'll get back together again next Friday and pick right up where we've left off here and continue on. So
Thank you very much, Lance.
you're welcome. So if we can do our dedication. So Debbie, would you put that up? Would you like to read that, or you want me to read that?
I'm happy to read them if you would like.
Sure.
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhnaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhnaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhnaya Soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Visualize that the light from Om Mani Padme Hum Shri is going out to all beings in the Bardo to bring them light, that they may find enlightenment in their own lives, in their next life, and in lives of others. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum 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 Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Hum. Om Hum. Om Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Good
Thank you.
night, Sangha brothers and sisters.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you
Good
all
night, everyone.
for hanging in there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Aren't we all
Thank you.
hanging in?
Thanks to
Good
everyone.
progress.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
What's that?
Good night.
It's 24.
Good night.